Good morning. Welcome to SP Streamer Live. I'm your host, Michael Simione. You can follow me on Twitter at SP Streamer. As you can see, we have a guest today, and he seems pretty excited. And that is John Laghezza, who you might know from MLB Moving Averages on Twitter. And he has a podcast called Corkstats, which we're going to kind of get into. So, John, just real quick, I know I mentioned it quickly, just tell everyone where they could find you on Twitter and where they could find your work and all that kind of stuff.
Twitter's at MLB Moving Averages, and right now, I'm handicapping it and doing fantasy and daily stuff at FTN. So you could get on FTN Bets or FTN Daily, follow them on Twitter. Or Mike, if you and I are not very hard to find in the baseball sphere on Twiher. So if you can't find us, like whatever, you're not going to be any good at fantasy baseball anyway.
Well, I guess that's a good thing that both people should be able to easily find both of us, right?
Oh yeah.
I guess we're lucky to be involved in all this stuff, which is awesome.
Yeah. You know what? That's why you're such a cool dude, Mike. Like where some people kind of get arrogant about it, like, I'm this guy, you're more, and that's why I think people gravitate to you because you have such a good attitude. But I agree with you. Although it's funny, I'm a little more brash than you are, but I also recognize I work very, 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 very hard. But I also know I'm very lucky, right? So I just love that. You and I always think like that. Yeah. Exactly.
All right, so we're gonna quickly talk about betting. We're gonna talk about your podcast. So for those who don't know, John has a Corkstats podcast, which you could see the cover art on the screen. So real quick, how did you fall into joining with FTN, starting this Corkstats podcast? How did the idea come to you?
Okay, well, this is a cool lesson for anybody out there that might want to get into content creation. And that, Mike, I was a quite literal unknown with an unknown handle, an anonymous handle. In fact, you and I joined Twitter like 2 weeks away from each other. I know that because I was one of your first followers. But the point being, I really wasn't unknown, and I just got to work. And it started. I got picked up by The Athletic right off of Twitter, and I got picked up by FTN right off of Twitter. So I always try and get that across to people when they tell me a lot that now, again, I hate to even be like that, but like we're somewhat established parts of the baseball industry, right? Of the fantasy baseball industry, at least. I hate to, I'm a nobody. I stink, but in reality, right? We're part of this thing. And people often talk about wow, you're in it. And I'm like, I wasn't. I worked my way in. And that was really it. I wanted, Mike, it sounds weird. I'm kind of selfish in that we're going to talk about profiting. And it's not to be, hard-hearted, Mike. It's that life is short, time is precious, things are expensive. So I'm always trying to monetize things. And that's where the podcast came in. Is I wanted this show. This show didn't exist. For somebody like me that was betting and doing DFS on a daily basis, somebody going game by game and really getting into all the advanced stuff, it just didn't exist. So I kind of filled the hole for myself. And then, one person said, hey, that's pretty entertaining. Oh, let's cut that. Oh, wow, this is pretty good. And then kind of just went from there. So it really wasn't, I'd love to take credit for me having planned this podcast that's kind of become at least somewhat popular. But no, it was just me working, right? That's usually at the base of most of my success. I'm quoting. It's just working really, really hard, but making sure that it's efficient. Also, Mike, something you and I talk about, you can't just work hard. You got to go somewhere, right? We have to be moving towards a goal. And I think you're a perfect example of that. You went from Twitter handle to now it's the website. You have a whole crew, and they're not just, a great crew of people, a great podcast. So, you're a little more humble than me. I'll say it for you. But listen, the proof is in the pudding, people. You got to hustle. You really got to hustle. Because a lot of nice guys, but a lot of these very nice guys are working while they're asleep.
Yeah, and it was funny. I mean, how I messaged you this morning. It was like 6 a.m. and you answered. I was like, of course, both of us are up doing things.
Yeah, of course. But
that's the way
it's
you
not a
do
coincidence. One of my sayings, Mike, and I have quite a few catchphrases, I guess, now as I do the show so often. It feels a lot less like luck when you work this hard.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good point. So your podcast, I mean, the motto is right where profit meets baseball.
Yeah.
I know you like to bet first five. We've kind of talked about it a little bit. So why do you think this is like a good method, or how do you go about it? And, basically just give me like a rundown of what you do, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we can actually do it quick. I mean, it's very intuitive.
Oh, think we lost John there.
And I'm assuming most.
There we go.
So, are we clear again?
Yeah, you're good now. You're good now. You froze for like a
seconds. So F5 is the first 5 innings of a game, and when you see ML or F9, that's a full 9, or money line means the entire game. So that's just to give you an idea of the terminology. The reason I like F5 so much, Mike, is again, we're in risk ventures. We're trying to eliminate variables, the bullpen probably being the wonkiest variable of them all. Not only is the samples all very small, right? Pitchers throw 20 pitches at a time. It becomes hard to gauge, but the usage is different every day because the situation and the leverages are different every day. So, I mean, right there's enough variables right there to kind of, if you're very serious about the money aspect and we're trying to just profit, we should be looking to eliminate variables. And I'll add one more that I love so much about F5 betting is that you could push. And I know it doesn't sound very exciting to tie, right? Ties are not very exciting, Mike. Again, success is often not very exciting. People want to hear, I bet $1 million and I make $10 million every day. That's not what it is. I'm very boring. It's very regimented. All my bets are down to the percentage point, the double decimal, and it kind of goes from there. And if you push, you take that one on the chin. And if I could expand one more where your and I work, where our work aligns, Mike, your streaming work, and my F5 betting work is that you're streaming, so by definition, they're not popular. So generally, they're going to be underdogs, right? Not always, but generally, streamers are underdogs. Generally.
Yep.
What we can do here, and I know you, and you're a very experienced baseball mind, you didn't even know about the plus half run line. And what that means, people, is you can, if you bet an underdog for 5 innings, you can cash that bet on a tie through 5. And once I got put onto that, it took my career to another level. It took it to a new trajectory because rather than worry about these, Mike, it's got to be 2 hours of bullpens. It's up and down. And the lead changes, and it's just heartbreaking. And again, something. This is professional stuff that you don't hear a lot of people on Twitter talking about. The ones that carry handbags, and it's emotional capital. We're here in the financial capital game. But how we succeed in that, Mike, is with us, right? Where you and I, we are at the base. When you're a bettor or a fantasy player or a streamer, you are at the base of the machine. You are the machine. So you have to be reliable. You have to remove, man, you just have to remove as many variables and as much emotion as possible. And it's still going to be difficult. I don't want to make it sound for a second like any of this is easy, but that's it. It really comes down to the nuts and bolts of it, of you and I trying to expose positive pitching matchups against the narratives, and just then crossing our fingers and hoping it pans out, right? And then hoping we don't get accused to ban on Twitter the next day.
I mean, that kind of leads into something I was going to ask you because you suggested for me to start doing it and keeping track. So I have been, and I've been pretty good at it. I don't really talk about it too much because I want to see more of a sample size than to just be like, hey, I do bets, by the way, if you all want to look at it. But it's only been like half a month. But so, I mean, for me personally, I mean, I typically don't gamble anyway. I mean, if I'm going to a game, I will just to make it more fun. But I feel like I couldn't even take my own bets because if I did, I felt like it would affect my thinking. Like I'd be a little more afraid to take some risks, and do you feel the same way for yourself or not really? Because you're talking about the emotional feeling. Like, I feel like if you are taking it, it might alter your thinking a little bit.
Well, I think again, Mike, I think part of why you're so good is you're very honest. Your ability to self-audit is very good. Right, so you're very humble, but your work is great. I think you're too humble, but that's right another point. Wait, hold on. I got sidetracked.
So do you take your own bets?
Oh yeah. Sorry. So emotions are always going to be a part of it. That's impossible to remove. But what we just can do is try and maximize being proactive opposed to being reactive. And the best way I do it, I talk about this on the show all the time, is I do my analysis first, Mike, and then I go shopping. Because if you go in the store, you will not be able to eliminate the knowledge of the price. You'll know the Red Sox are an underdog today. They happen to be, and you might not think they should be. When you do your analysis, you will not be able to ignore that. So what I do when I get up at 4:30 in the morning and start doing this stuff is not look at the board. I don't look at DFS pricing for pitchers, and I don't look at the betting board. I want to determine it myself. Meaning, I'm going to make steak for you, Mike, I know I want to pay $15 a pound for steak, and that's what it's worth to me. And if I go in the store and it's 25, I'm going to say no. But if it's 8, I'm going to say yes. So whereas if you didn't know that, you might say $15 steak. That sounds good. Right. And you don't have anything to compare it to. So again, at the core of all of this is just a lot of hard work. Right.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right, cool. And how about anyone who's like kind of getting into betting? Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah. The first one would probably be to take your advice. The first thing is to be humble, because you need to understand that quite literally 99.9% of people fail at this on their own. Quite literally 99.9%. It's a venture. Many people have tried, and a lot of people have done what you've said, Mike, which is try and fail and not tell anybody about it. Yeah. So it's being humble is number one. Number two, I would say, is to this actually, if you want a tip, this is what got me to the next level as a professional trader, and it was trading on paper. So bet on paper. Everyone feels this need. They have to run and start betting money. Now I would say this: if you do have cash, with the inception of internet betting, where you could bet like $2 or $3, maybe that doesn't move the needle for you and you want to see some gains. That's different. I'm talking about people betting legitimate amounts of money before they've tested their system. So you can bet on paper first. I used to trade on paper, meaning, and Mike, for betting, it's very easy. Yankees -110, bet this, pays this, and then just check it the next day. So I tell people do that. And if you can string together 90 profitable days, give me 90 days set where you're profitable, then I will say go forward. And in the meantime, because remember, there's always a lot going on. You have to develop your plan, because that's the other problem with gamblers, especially ones first getting in, is the expectations are they're totally off. I mean, it's I feel it breaks my heart, because you want people to succeed. Right. But I could give you all the picks. If you don't handle the money properly, you could end up at zero in a season that I made a lot of money, because you got tapped out, in May, and we kept chugging along because we managed our money properly. So
right.
A lot of it comes down to that: is don't get over your skis, kind of take a breath and develop a system. Listen, man, my algo has, at this point, it's shocking. Like, it's got to be 2,500 man hours. And I found out firsthand that a Google spreadsheet only holds 5 million cells. I found that out firsthand when the sheet that I use for my algo told me, like, hey, Big Mouth, you need a new sheet because you're at 5 million cells. And I have OCD.
That's crazy.
I'm the guy that I don't know if you're the type of people, because there are only two types of people in the world: the people who crop off the bottom of those spreadsheets, and the people who don't. Like, I make sure to delete, those bottom 800 rows or whatever, because I'm like compulsive. So yeah, it's all work. It's just great. Again, at the center of it all is a lot of hard work. But again, Mike, what do you and I do a lot of that we don't hear a lot of? You and I smile quite a bit, and we have a lot of fun, and now you and I have kind of become friends, and we're chatting in a group chat, and it's fun. So that's a third part, is enjoy it. Because betting and trading risk ventures, you've seen it, Mike, the vitriol that some people bring with it. So here you are, you're putting in all this work, you're excellent at what you do, you have a great record, you miss a couple days in a row. Like, the 23 Yankees had losing streaks. The 98 Yankees, right? But the 98 Yankees lost games 11-0. It's just, you can't look at it like that. So to be able to kind of rise above and to stay in a good mood, man, I'll tell you, man, it's very hard sometimes to get up at 4:30 a.m., 5 a.m. if I'm on a losing streak, thinking, man, what am I doing? I'm working hard, and I'm moving backwards. I'm not even, moving laterally. So there's a lot of it there. And I think, of course, you circled a lot of the important stuff. It's emotional control, money control, emotional control at the same time, and that's why it's very difficult. It really is very hard. It's very, very, very hard.
Yeah. Losing streaks are the worst. I mean, it's like you said, I mean, they're inevitable. I mean, I'm in one right now. They're inevitable, but the hard part about it, I think for me mainly, is I know people are taking my advice. So even though in the long run I'm not, but it letting them down, but in the short term I am, and I just feel bad because Obviously, I want to do well because that means you do well, and I don't want to do bad because I know that hurts you. So
you can't.
But luckily nowadays, typically people so far this season have been pretty nice to me.
I like when they chime in on something random. You're like, "Hey, I was out having a barbecue," and someone's like, "Yo, what's up with that streamer pick on Tuesday?" And you're like, "What the? Get out of here!" It's funny, but the lesson remains. That person fails to separate, and if you fail to separate, and it's not just emotion from the money. Separate the wins from the losses. Separate the micro from the macro. You're not going to succeed over the long term. Just know there's a 0% chance. There's a lot of it. Us being kind of cool customers, yeah, it helps. People like us, but it's part of the business, right? Part of what helps. I won't speak for you, but part of what helps me succeed is the attitude. That we have a closer's mentality that you got to shake it off. You can't let it affect you because that certainly is not going to make you better at your trade.
Yep, definitely. And it's easier said than done, of course.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something you got to do.
Can I add one thing, Mike? Can I add one thing?
Yeah, go.
I want to be very clear about it. I have blown up accounts, bro. I have blown up accounts that would make your head spin in both trading and betting. I want to be very honest because now I get it, and I guess we're younger men, you know what I mean? But people get the idea of like, I blew onto the scene and I wrote this algorithm and I started betting and I make all this money. That might be the very end of the story. That's not that's not the whole story. Okay. Man, and you never think me to be the type to be like beat myself up. Dude, I mean, I've had, $10,000, $20,000 swings in a matter of hours, and you everything freezes, and that's what's important. That's what I wanted to get at. That same thing happens in betting. And here's the last lesson, because I know I go on too long, but I like to think that we leave in a trail of good stuff. And this is how your bettors, your followers, Mike, your newbies will know that you bet too much. And it's when you care about it. If you find yourself pacing, you bet too much. You bet too much. You bet too much. Because by percentage, if you bet 2% of your entire stack in a night, and then you have 5 different plays, none of those plays move the needle for you. You understand what I'm saying? So you should never, ever be that guy. Oh, this is BS. I am not like that at all. My rule is I hoot and I holler until the third out. And then once the third out is made, you will not hear me say a word. You really won't. Yeah. And it's so don't carry the losses. Right. This is really turned into some pretty actionable stuff, Mike. Man, this is really good. You're a hell of a host, man. You should do this. You should do this for a living.
Oh no, I hate hosting. I'm the worst. All Doug. I need Doug for whenever I can. All right, let's talk some fantasy here.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about some SIERA. Well, players who have a big difference between their ERA and SIERA. For those who don't know, SIERA is typically the most predictive stat when it comes to future ERA. I probably should look this up, but I don't really know when it's actionable. I don't know how many innings, but we're going to look at it anyway. We're 2 months in. It doesn't hurt. So we're going to look at some pitchers who looks like they should be better and some who looks like they should be worse moving forward, and if we believe it or not. So the first pitcher we're going to start off with is Mike Minor. He has a 4.65 ERA, but his SIERA is at 3.81. We'll start with you on this one, John. What are your thoughts on him?
Well, the idea with SIERA, right, if I'm not mistaken, is where XFIP was regressing fly ball rates, SIERA tries to take more elevation into account. From what I understand, I was looking at the formula this morning. I hope Rotograph should make a T-shirt of it. It's just wild.
It's involved.
Right. But we like that because it does count elevation. And I think you mentioned something really good, Mike, about the sample. Now, we should never overreact to a sample stat, even if it were a big sample. But SIERA is a great hint. So let me tell you, if Mike is pointing it, tells you it's a good clue, it is a good clue. So I'm weary of overusing any one stat. I kind of do. Man, it's funny. I think I kind of do what SIERA does, simply. I try and do on my podcast, Mike, and what I often talk about is breaking players into baskets. One of those baskets being elevation and batted ball quality. So I don't get so much thrown off by SIERA as I kind of build these things. So I looked at Minor today, and if SIERA equals like elevation basket, his elevation basket is very good. Something that I've been talking about and talking to people about is the change in the ball. We've seen, right, Mike? So Major League Baseball wanted to increase the bounce, which they did, right? We've seen an increase in EV at the point of contact. However, they raised the seams. So the increase in drag has increased resistance, which is amplified the longer the ball is in the air, meaning fly balls are more greatly affected, right? The longer they have that flap to hit. Now I'm exaggerating. A seam raise is micrometers or whatever, but when I spoke to Barton Smith, he said that's more than enough to change flight path. So these things do matter, okay? So where we're getting at with the X-Stats people, why I've always been making sure to circle this is barrel rate is phenomenal. Barrel rate has been one of the great things that X-Stats have given us, that Savant has given us. The problem with the new ball, Mike, and the new understanding is that although the measurements are correct, the understanding is off because of that raise in EV without the subsequent production, let's call it. So Mike Minor has an 8% listed barrel rate. That's where I'm going. I didn't forget you. 8% listed barrel rate, which is okay, right? It's 8% barrels. It's really just average. You have to raise one eyebrow because he's posting. He has a 40% fly ball rate, which is generally where we start to get worried. But with the new ball, that's not a non-starter like it used to be. 2 years ago, 40% fly ball was like the first. It was a negative. It was actually a negative. To say 40% fly ball was a bad characteristic. Now it's not. Fangraphs has his heart hit rate listed at below 29, right? And so for people who are not hip, Fangraphs and StatCast keep different accounting, right? StatCast is a raw measure of 95 miles an hour. Fangraphs uses Baseball Information Solutions, BIS. It's a human that physically puts like a subjective edge to it. Now, granted, they're usually close, but there are players that we see this giant disparity in. So what's going on with Minor, just from the numbers, is that the ball is being hit very hard, but it's being hit low. Back to the barrel rate. His Alex Chamberlain, now, of course, everyone should be following Alex Chamberlain. If you're not, unfollow me. He adjusted barrel rate on that pitch leaderboard. So I don't know if you've dug into this at all, Mike.
I did not. Okay.
Tremendous disparities in barrel rate and the adjusted barrel rate, meaning the jump in EV is now improperly placing balls into the barrel bin, explaining the drop in production with the rise in barrels. Okay. Now, one very good example that I circled, I came up, again, a lot of this stuff is because I hash these out in the show every day. So my eyebrow went up. I was looking at Jose Barrios, who the home run rate is low. Everything looks phenomenal, but his barrel rate's in the double digits. His adjusted barrel rate is not in the double digits. It's like 7. So what Alex also did for us is he's now given us, now we already had them, but I wasn't using them, which is blasts. So again, people aren't familiar. Blasts are the barrel of barrels. Blasts are the ideal subset of barrels, or if you're from our neck of the woods, the Cadillac of barrels. You know what I'm saying? It's the Cadillac of barrels. So that's what we want to be looking at, people, is your blast rate, because there's no hiding the blast rate. Okay, because that was already idealized, optimized. Okay, so the true barrel rate for Minor is in the 7s. Now, I know we could easily say, well, 7 and 8, what's the big difference? I'd say 15% miss is a tremendous difference. Okay, so let's not just get lost in the totals. Let's keep an eye on the percentage miss. Now, that's as close of a barrel miss as you're going to see. Mike, again, I do every pitcher. Some of them are doubled. So you cannot use barrel rates as listed by Savant or Fangraphs right now. And I believe that's why I've been so successful at betting this year, because people are chasing these expected stats. So I took you on a long win there. But the big shaking butt for Mike Minor is the blast rate, the number that matters, is at 4. The home run per 9, the number that matters, is below average at 1.15 or 1.2. So in 75 million words or less, but now we won't have to do this for every person. And that's why I didn't want to start explaining stuff people didn't know what I was talking about, which I often do. So you asked me about SIERA. I took you on a bit of a wild, fantastic.
Sorry, we got a nice lesson on barrel right now.
I took you on Coolio's fantastic. Come along and ride on my. So we had to get a little music in there. But I built you an elevation basket of a pitcher that's doing very well. You know, so long story short, I'm buying Mike Minor right now. I have worried a little bit with the fastball. Again, I'm like allergic to home runs. Some pitchers they work up in the zone. I know you're very big on location with pitches, Mike, and he works up in the zone, and I think a function of working a fastball up are home runs. So I think that's just part of it. I wish he wouldn't do it sometimes, because if you watch it, you're like, no, what are you doing? Because if you miss, it looks like he served it up on a platter. But yeah, I think Minor's good going forward for sure.
Yeah. So I agree. I mean, like we said, you mentioned the fastball. I mean, the velocity has been down, so it's not where we want it to be. But his last 4 starts, he has a 3 ERA, 2.51 FIP, K percentage is over 30%. The WHIP is a 1.08. I just wanted to throw this up real quick. This is his game log, basically by month, and this little blue line right here, which maybe should I zoom in more? This little blue line right here is his changeup usage. For some reason, I couldn't figure out why he wasn't throwing it to start the season. And he was, leaning on a different breaking pitch, but thankfully he's upping it because I think it plays off really well to his fastball. So anyway, to sum it up, I'm glad he's going more towards the changeup. I wish that fastball velocity come back a little bit. Who knows? Maybe
have you noticed the shape?
Would be pretty solid.
The shape of the fastball has changed, though. He's flattened it quite a bit. And I don't know if one has to do with the other, but I wondered if, the idea of a flattening fastball is it's improving. Again, people, briefly, the idea of a rising fastball, they don't actually rise. They just rise in relation to gravity across the field.
Yeah.
But it's flattened his fastball, which has made it more effective. And I wonder if maybe he traded a little bit of velo for the rise, in which case maybe it's not a bad thing. I'm still getting into this. It's almost,
I get what you're saying.
You have to watch almost every pitch of every player,
Yeah.
But I feel like the fastball that I've been worried about with the velo might actually not be as bad as we think. I think that's what I'm getting at, that there might not be a decrease in its quality like we would normally expect from a decrease in velocity.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'd have to look into, I haven't really noticed his movement or anything on it. But either way, again, I mean, we both like him. So if he's out there, you want to grab him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I wouldn't let him out there.
All right. I'm going to skip a picture here, John. We're going to just roll on to Pablo Lopez.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Pablo. I put this nice little video GIF together of him striking players out with changeups. He has a 2.71 ERA with a 3.90 SIERA. I'll go quickly on my thoughts on him. I love the guy. I love his changeup. He's a high ground ball pitcher, has a decent amount of strikeouts. He doesn't give up home runs. He might regress a little bit, but I think he's a super safe pitcher. He's not really going to blow up your ratios. The one interesting thing that I see that I'm curious to see what he does moving forward is his ERA at home is 0.98, but on the road it's a 5.04. He did just have a decent start. I mean, he only went 4 innings, but he had like 9 strikeouts on the road recently. But I want to see that home road split hopefully come to be a little more even. I'd like to see him pitch better on the road. But overall, I love him. What are your thoughts on him, John?
Yeah, I'm big on Lopez. It's funny because of the elevation basket and the batted ball profile. Man, this year 47 ground ball, 32 hard hit via Fangraphs, but also 32 via Statcast. So it's not just a subjective thing. He's quite literally very difficult. That's one of the lowest hard hit rates that you're going to find among starters. And again, 8% barrel, Mike, 6.6 true. So now we're off 1.5 on 6.5. That's like a 24% miss. So that's not any good. So again, now, maybe 8 is not the kind of thing people are chasing for him to get destroyed. But if I were to tell you his barrel rate was 47 ground ball, 32 hard hit, 6 barrel, and his blast rate is at 2, again, just as low as that number goes. I handle a lot of these stats. He's very, very difficult. And you see it just 296 xWOBA, 362 expected on contact with the shift in these X stats, like I mentioned. Because remember, that jump in barrel rate is also going to reflect in xWOBA and xWOBAcon, something that is, again, it's been misleading people. I've seen plenty of that. Man, I can't believe this pitcher's xWOBA is now 335. It's because 335 is the new 315. That's the only thing that happened. It's not that it's killing me that so many quality analysts have walked into the trap of pitchers that we know are good, that are still good. But like, man, but I can't believe this one thing. Yeah, that's the anomaly. It's wrong. That's it.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. It's wrong. So I spoke to Alex Chamberlain. He told me to be careful not to apply a blanket tax, let's call it. So again, Alex, being objectively 500,000 times smarter than I am, I won't do that. But I would say this, and he agreed with me. It's almost like average EV. We want to be careful in the middle, right? Averages can throw you off in the middle, Mike. But it works on the edges. You're right. You can't paper over a 2-degree launch angle if it's your average, because there aren't enough high balls to do it. Okay, so it's the same thing with X stats and our new understanding. You can use on the edges, be careful in the middle. The thing now is 330 for a pitcher is in the middle. So the fact that Pablo Lopez has kept his xWOBA under 300, which was already a benchmark for excellence. I mean, excellence. The list. Yeah. Mike, we were talking about, I appreciate you for giving me a chance to talk about fantasy. I haven't really had a chance to get into it. I want to run some stats. I don't think there's more than 10 or a dozen pitchers with a sub 300 xWOBA right now that have, the innings in. So give me all the Lopez. I want all the Lopez, and I love the profile. Like, everything works off the curve. Again, I was listening to you, and Eno really piqued my interest in the spin traits, spin characteristics, let's call it. Mirroring and stuff like that. Wow, you guys are on to something totally. It matters. The deceptive, let's call it the deceptive qualities of an arsenal are something people don't talk often enough about, right? They want to hear, this pitch has the 45% whiff rate. This pitch has a .90x batting average. But in reality, sometimes it's just a little adjustment of spin that throws off the eye, that changes the entire arsenal. Again, I spoke to Russell Carlton about that. I spoke to Derek about that. It's deception really matters. So I would have to thank you for kind of opening I was doing more stat analysis, and I think there's more to it. So when we look at Lopez, that's one of my favorite things is that the fan action he gets on the pitches. He's awesome. Yep. I consider him like a legit. SP23 for me. Like
there's a joke with the SP Stream membership. We have that Discord, and there's a joke in there because so many people have asked me throughout this entire season. Like, I would say, like, it was several times a month, saying, like, who do you like better, Sandy Alcantara or Pablo Lopez? And every time I would reply in all caps, Pablo. So now it's like an ongoing joke where, like, anytime someone asks me, everyone replies in all caps, Pablo. Because I'm such a big fan of him. Yeah, I think he's really fantastic. Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next pitcher. That's going to be Aaron Civale. He has a 3.28 ERA. The SIERA comes with as a 4.38. So basically, it looks like regression might be coming. His FIP, xERA, and xFIP are all above 4. What are your thoughts on him, John?
Yeah, I think I like Aaron Civale a lot, but he probably has the worst of these profiles. He's always been a good ground ball pitcher. We do really like that. But he has the highest true barrel rate of the group. That's over 7. He has the highest blast rate of the group. That's up at 5. He has the highest expected Wobacon. That's 377. Though that also is not terrible. I don't want to paint him as being terrible. But again, if we are kind of pulling right at the threads, the minutia, that has been an issue for Civale. If you remember, I remember you and I were talking about that after his first kind of short set. Man, he didn't even get barreled the first 50 innings he had or something like that. So we were expecting this like untouchable kind of pitcher, which hasn't been the case. And I think it goes to what I mentioned before. He's just working up with the fastball, and I think that's just part of it, right? So, which again, I don't understand why he has 6 very good pitches, the fastball being one of them, but he can work anywhere in the zone. I mean, Civale can quite literally work in or out, up or down to either righties or lefties. He has a very deep arsenal. And I don't know if it's a stubbornness thing or if it's I don't want to buck Cleveland is, they're a pitching factory, but that kind of gets me. And we've seen it with McKenzie as well this year. Their pitchers are challenging up in the zone a little bit more than I'd like them to. So I think that's where the Savale, the SIERA, and the home runs are coming from is a function of that kind of part of the profile.
Yeah, I mean, he's good. I'd like to see him lower the fastball usage. He's actually thrown it more than ever actually recently. You know, when he was kind of breaking out last season and throwing a lot more strikeouts, it was because he's going to the cutter more. So I'd like to see him do that. And this is, I'm going to bring this up real quick. This is what happens when Savale, he loves to throw the four seam, but he tends to do this kind of often and just leave it right over the middle of the plate. And boom, right there's a triple.
Mike, that was a perfect depiction of what I was saying before. That was just a perfect depiction of it. Great, what a great job! Just a great job of the mitt was in the right place. The thinking is in the right place. But man, you got to make sure that you miss out. You can't miss that one in. You got to miss that out, and that's been the problem with him. Yeah, it's just a little frustrating because you could have went anywhere with that. You didn't have to, and you're end up challenging guys middle, and you're gonna get punished. You can't do that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was definitely that was something I saw. So I'd like to see him kind of, bring that in a little bit and go with the cutter and the breaking balls a little more. But we'll see what happens. He's not trending that way, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All right. Next section. So this is a little fun thing we got from it was an idea by Rob DiPietro. Great idea. Basically measuring, would you rather a 2-start streamer against a 1-start like pitcher that's basically pretty much set in your rotation so far for the entire year. So we're going to roll with that. So we got 2 of these. I'm going to bring it up on the screen real quick. So we kind of got a little battle here. So we got Nick Pivetta against Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah.
Nick Pivetta has 2 starts, one versus Miami and then the other one versus Toronto. And then Alcantara faces the Atlanta Braves. So John, if you had to go with one here, are you taking the 2-starter or the 1-start with Alcantara?
Okay, I have the 2-starter here, and this is first of all, it's a phenomenal exercise. You're right. And the best way for me to do it was I actually kind of did little single game projections. Right.
Okay.
And that was, and I sometimes, man, I just pretend to be smart. Anyway, so Pivetta versus Miami. He's been good for 6 innings, so I felt like that was fair to pencil him in for 6. Miami is going okay, right? And he's got some strikeouts. So I put 6 innings, 1 earned, 6 Ks for Pivetta against Miami. But in Toronto, I have 4 1/3, 4 earned, and 3 strikeouts. So not run out, but because he's been good, and Toronto's only human. But man, are they good, and they're very difficult to go up against. They're very, very difficult to go up against. And again, I hate to be the person like, he's going to throw a complete game shutout versus Miami, and he's going to give up 9 runs to Toronto, which is normally not the case. So if we combine the 2, I had 6 and 4s. I got 10 innings, 5 earned, and 9 Ks. And for Sandy versus Atlanta, who he faced already, but I kind of had that in my mind anyway. I was thinking 6 innings, 3 earned, 5 strikeouts. Sandy's going to give you a quality start, but it's not going to be great. Very hard to ask for anybody to do much more than that against the Braves, who, I mean, the front of that lineup is just phenomenal. So so there you have the same ERA, 4.5 ERA, right? Half the runs for innings, but more total strikeouts for Pivetta. So that was it for me. And again, I think the chance for the W exists against Miami, although Miami's not quite the doormat people with the narrative, driven people tend to do. They're not that bad. But I think the win, I think Pivetta has a chance for a win. So give me Pivetta, but it's not great. And it's funny, Mike, again, something you and I speak about, we talk about off season. I draft, not say I draft pitching early like I double tap aces, but I draft pitching early, meaning I like to draft my pitching in the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You know what I mean? Like that middle area.
A bunch. Yeah.
I get all those guys. And I have all the Marlin pitchers this year. Like those are the guys that I have, which is funny. You sent me that list and I was like, these guys are my player share page. Savale, Pablo Lopez, Zach Eflin. These are like, those are my guys. Like those are the guys I wrote up. Like those are my guys. I'm like, is he picking up? Is he setting me up here? But but I like the guys that I rely on a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like, man, Alcantara would generally be one of those guys. But if you have one more pitcher than Spots, which I know can be difficult, especially with injuries, it's nice to have options. But if I'm stuck here, I guess it's Pavetta. I can't believe I'm saying that. I guess it's Pavetta.
Nah, I would lean him too because I could see he's been pitching well. I could see him pitching well against Miami, and then if he ends up pitching okay against Toronto, it's a win. Which he definitely could. I mean, again, he's just been pitching well. Atlanta can pretty much explode anytime. Looks like Freeman's starting to get going. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, you'll accumulate more Ks, more innings. You could potentially get, you could potentially get 12 innings of really solid, ratios where compared to Alcantara, you're only going to probably get like
I mean, listen, the Boston offense is a lot worse than that offense behind you too,
True.
Yeah.
All right, next one. It's just almost kind of two streamers, but not really. Mize is really making a case for himself, which I'm glad because I told everyone to pick him up and it worked out. It's worked out so far. We got Randy Dobnak. He's going to be going against the Yankees and Houston. And then you got Casey Mize going against Seattle. The Yankees have really been struggling, so that's what makes this a little more interesting. I think I'd be leaning the Mize side here. This is probably not as close as the other one. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I didn't think this one was particularly close, to be honest. Yeah. I just wrote easily Mize. That's my analysis. Easily Mize. I think Dobnak has really not been great. He's been on my list of pitchers that, the lead ballers, the sinker ballers that have had trouble with that downward break. There's been quite a few pitchers that, I don't know if we're going to call it a location profile, but it's been like 6 or 8 inches higher in general than he wants it, and he's gotten punished. So where I used to really like Dobnak because listen, man, you give me a 60% ground baller for F5, that's my kind of guy. But I'm off him. And as bad as the Yankees have been, and agreed, they have been bad. I have been pretty good. I don't know if it's a fan thing. This year I've been good, Mike, at picking on the Yankee trends because it's gone with their discipline. So if you were to track Yankee walk rate, it's taken their production. So that right now, last 7 is back in the double digits. So I think the Yankees are going. I think the Yankees are gonna get it go. I think they're gonna get it going. Yeah, the walk rate's over 10, the O swing below 28, and the ground balls down to 3 in the last week. So those are things that kind of hamper the Yankees. Although, as bad as they may be right now, Houston is ridiculously good. I don't want dude. That has. I mean, I love Dobnak. I have the Fu Manchu. I've DM'd him to try and get him on my show. Like I love him. But he's going to get rolled by Houston. I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's going to get rolled. So you can't. That will also be another thing with streaming is if I have to choose like Dobnak versus Houston, I'd rather just get a reliever if I can get a high impact reliever sometimes. Maybe I'll get 3 innings, 4 Ks, no runs, and we can move on to the next week. Because those blow-ups, man, if he, even if he gives one up on the way out and he gives you 5, but he gives up 5 or 6, that's what that one feels like versus Houston.
Yep.
And no strikeouts.
Yeah, I agree with you. It really wasn't close. I was just trying to put something else in there. And there's not a lot of two starts.
The first one's really good, though.
The first one was good. There's not a lot of 2-start starters because Monday there's like no games. It's so weird. There's only like a few games. So, all right. So we're going to move on to streamers now. Pitching streamer you like for the upcoming week. Did you pick one out, Joe?
Well, I was kind of just looking at that list that you had. And it's funny. I guess I do too much. I work on this stuff too much because a lot of the guys on the list, I was really surprised to see that their ownership rates were so low. I just want to double check. I saw Alzolay, I saw Brubaker on that list. I saw Matthew Boyd on that list. I like Spencer Turnbull, although he got hurt yesterday. That was a hard.
Got hurt.
And whenever I think of Spencer Turnbull, I actually think of you, Mike. I don't know why if you were on him early or just maybe the person I think about. But I know you were. I
loved him
2 years ago.
Into 2020. Coming into 2020.
And now it looks like he finally took the
I know. Because he's doing what we wanted. He started going 4-seam, getting rid of that sinker. He's going 4-seam slider, and that's all he needed. And he finally is doing it, and of course he gets hurt.
So I'm looking for skill set, and maybe one other person might be Gomer. I know everyone was running for their life, but again, if you have a high walk pitcher that stops walking guys, you give him a look. And if he keeps not walking guys, then you roll him out there. Like that's
and we kind of lost you again there, Jeff. All right, until you come back,
Yeah.
because we lost you here, John. I'm actually with you. I'm on Gomber. He's going against Miami. His last 5 starts, 1.53 ERA. K percentage is almost 30, a 0.82 WHIP. He's been going to the changeup more, and this year the changeup's been great. 17.9 swing strike, has a 9-mile-an-hour gap between that and the fastball in terms of velocity. And he's actually been better at home with a lot of the Rockies pitchers this year, which is kind of weird. But that should carry over into the road starts, I think. So I think he's really good going forward. John, you're back, so I don't know if you wanted to keep saying.
Yeah, it was just I guess. Yeah, I know it's weird. I never have any issues, and it's nice out there.
That's all right.
Yeah, for me, it's about. Man, I think I try and add these guys before it's time to stream them, if that makes sense. Again, we play NFBC. So the second I identify, again, it's not necessarily SIERA, but it is, right? When I identify the elevation basket that I love, right? You show me a 55% ground ball rate with a 28% hard hit rate and a home run rate below 1. I'll show you a guy I can figure out, I can get behind. And that's what happened with a lot of these guys. Brubaker and Alzolay, big hat tip to Eno. Those were both of his guys. He was pushing both of those guys pretty hard, and he hit a home run on both of them because they both not only are excellent, I think they both stick going forward, which again is something I know you speak about, Mike, and what I'm always trying to do is find the guys that are going to stick. So I think Gomber is a stick, and I don't think Alzolay should be on a waiver right now. Even at 12, I think he's rosterable. So he feels like a cheap way. But if any of those guys are out there, like even Justin Dunn said he feels okay, that IL was not what they thought. He's starting to come around. I like him. So yeah, give me like Alzolay, give me Dunn, give me Gomber, give me Brubaker. I'm betting these guys every time out. I'm betting them every time out because they come in as underdogs, and generally they're the better pitcher that day.
Yeah. Yeah, Dunn was really interesting before the injury. I mean, he upped his velocity like over 2 miles an hour.
Yep.
And he's got a pretty decent breaking ball. I feel like he's a year away. Like I feel like he might end up being a popular breakout candidate. Yeah.
He's going to be awesome eventually. Eventually. He's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if we even start to see at the end of this year because we're the progress so far. He went from untenable, those walk rates are untenable. You can't give me a 15% walk rate. I can't get down with that. Yeah, is it just even if the bad right then a little bit of bad ball luck and you're in the hole, right? Walk, single, and like everything's falling apart. So yeah, Dunn. I like Dunn going forward. He might actually be interesting. You might be able to buy low on him right now, right? He might be floating out there somewhere. So if I had a roster space, I'd occupy it with him. I like him.
Justin Dunn's from Long Island, right?
Is that right? I didn't know.
Yeah, I know some. I have a friend who played with him, and there's someone else. I forget his name. He's on Texas. Came up last year a little bit. I can't remember. Palumbo.
Oh, right. That's right.
Yeah. So, so it's pretty cool. So Dunn's from cool. All right. We're gonna move on to hitting streamers now. Did you pick a hitting streamer, John?
No.
All right, I'll roll this. I'll go with this quick.
Hold on, do people? I guess I'm gonna out myself. Do people stream hitters?
Yes. Oh, it's becoming bigger than streaming pitching.
Really?
In main events and everything, a lot of them because the thinking behind it is streaming pitching's hard, and they could blow up your ERA and WHIP for a week technically. Yeah. Whereas hitting, it's not really going to kill you. I mean, sure, they could hurt average, but it's not like anything. It's not like they could completely decimate it. You know what I mean? Right. Whereas, like, if you get gombered, that literally ruins your week.
It can take you a week to recover from that. Yeah.
Yes.
It seems weird, I guess. But now, is there there's got to be a certain level of hitter that you're willing to stream, or would you stream a first 5-round pick? Like, would you stream would you stream Paul Goldschmidt? Like, would you sit him? I mean, if you only had 2 or 4 in the early sets, you're like, I don't know.
What people do is they do like streaming pitchers. They'll purposely not really take their last good bat. I guess they'll just plan on streaming that spot, their utility. So you get a guy like I'm going to mention like Hunter Renfroe, right? Like this week where I said there's no games really Monday. Renfroe is not that owned. He has 7 games this week, which not a lot of players have. He faces the weaker part of the Yankees rotation. He's been pretty good against righties, faces a good amount of righties. The last 10 games, he's hitting 406, which is insane. So he's been really hot. So people will do that, or they'll ride the righty lefty splits and just with like a Darren Ruff on the Giants, just ride him against lefty.
My worry, I think, is I mean, I had my question, you answered it, and it's with the roster spot. So if you had, again, I mentioned being proactive, had you gone into it saying this space is for that, then that I totally get. Me, I'm very, very, very much into cementing offensive lineup spots. Meaning I don't like to make offensive decisions at all, because when I try and do it, that's when it goes wrong. The guy I benched stole 3 bases, and that was the 3 steals you really needed, or whatever.
I think what it more so is too is scheduling as well. I mean, sometimes you get those players who, Monday through Friday only for some reason will have 3 games. And taking a player that's a little lesser, that's going to get you 5 games, you're more than likely to get more counting stats from them. Man, that's the idea behind it.
The idea, I get it. It just makes me nervous thinking that, because I feel like in general, again, this is my own approach, is I'm normally looking for people to stick. So it's like, I'm sitting somebody that I like for somebody I don't like as much because of the circumstance. Man, I don't get me wrong, I get it, more opportunities, but then what if you roll the guy out there and he doesn't start on Monday, and all of a sudden now the games of the experiences are a little bit closer, and then I think Chris Baseball Pods mentioned, because we were talking about streaming hitters in the group chat, and it was, you got to be careful, right? Because a better team could have less games, but end up with as many plate appearances because they score runs. Right, I believe it's Toronto and Miami. What's Toronto and Miami is a pretty big disparity in offense. So, one less game for Toronto, you might get the same amount of PAs, especially from let's say it's Bichette. I think it might have been. It was Bichette Jazz, right? Was a popular.
Yeah, something like that. Right.
Well, listen, hat tip to those people. If you're thinking about sitting either one of those guys, you did a very good job drafting, because that means you have a middle infielder accounted for, a second baseman accounted for, and a util accounted for. And I don't think you could sit either one of those guys. I guess it just depends on circumstances, or you could even just be too, one of your players got hurt. You know what I mean? And your bench is all right, and you want to add someone who should be good for the week. So a lot of different avenues there. Before we go, John, just reiterate where everyone can find you on Twitter, where they could find your podcast, all that kind of stuff. Yes, Mike, thank you so much. I had a massive blast. I love hanging with you.
Definitely.
Yeah, where I'm at MLB moving averages, really get me any time of day, any day of the week. I really don't sleep. It's, I guess, part of my charm. You can see the giant circles. I'm starting to look like Uncle Fester, man. By the time we get the All-Star break, my eyeballs are going to fall out of my head, I swear. At MLB moving averages on Twitter, and then at FTN, everywhere, FTN Bets, FTN Daily, FTN Fantasy. But my baby really is the Corkstats Pod. And, I break down every single game on every main slate, every single game with all the advanced stats. And I really try and put a focus, and again, some of this is inspired by Mike, put a focus on the actionable things that we see with pitchers, not just reading you the ERA and the whip, that's kind of where. Again, Mike, all props to you, man, because you and Rob Silver were 2 of the first people that I remember that were talking about individual pitches, talking about movement, talking about not usage. Usage is kind of surface, but the way the ball moves, what I mean when I say, use and movement. And it's what matters to me. And again, I think it's what's put me on the front of this. Mm-hmm. I've done very, very well because when you identify new pitches, new pitch shapes, velocity, new attack plans, splits, that's when you find a little edge if you're streaming or betting in 5 innings. Remember, a streaming set, that sample is as small as she goes. The same thing for F5 betting. So those little details are what matter. So, context is really my thing. And if you're picking up, me speaking like the Micro Machine guy, then check out the podcast.
I love the way you talk in the podcast. It's phenomenal. It's so different the way you do your podcast.
I'm not into hearing about myself, which is weird.
It's so good. I love it. All right. That about does it. Follow us on Twitter at SP Streamer. Subscribe to our Twitch and YouTube if you enjoyed the show. We will be back Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. for our typical 7:30 shows all throughout the week. And I hope you all have a good weekend, and we will see you Monday.
Yes, peace.